will be able to have the shifts in terms of how they behave.
Sure, sure. Just on that last point, if I may, Ms. Fuller, um, I I was thinking as this testimony was taking place that religious leaders could be used or could be effective, I should say, in changing some of these traditions and cultures. And I'm wondering who you think on from our side should be the effective communicators with religious leaders. Other clergy, is that the best way to approach religious leaders and try to change their way of thinking and get them to communicate with their congregations and that kind of thing?
Yes, I was thinking that they should be included in our programs. Like when we are writing out our projects, um, they should be included as to how we could work with them and how they could work with their congregation as to sensitize their communities based on their faith and as to how people could make the shift and be able to protect their communities.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, I did mention earlier that I had really began to learn about the Juju men when I was in Nigeria, and I heard the story that happened frequently in Benin City, and I heard it from a woman who actually was trafficked for 5 years in Rome, not all in Rome, but much of it. And Sister Eugenia, who does a great rescue in Rome, she actually goes out with vans and brings in women who have been forced into trafficking off the streets. And many of them say no because of the fear before they left. A ritual was performed over them, and they were told, horrible things will happen if you don't do exactly what the trafficker says. And she had that same issue. Elizabeth was her name, the young woman. And she said, only when the faith of, in her case, Jesus Christ, came to bear, did she realize that she has nothing to fear. That greater is he that is within you than he is within the world. And the same would apply, I believe, to Judaism and other faiths. But that they had nothing to fear. And yet, there is a fear factor there that's very profound. I don't fully understand it with regards to what it's like on a day-to-day basis in Africa, like why people don't turn in the witch doctor, why the police don't arrest, but maybe they don't have the laws to do it with. But how much power does that fear factor? Because this Elizabeth went on and on. She was a very amazing woman, and just amazing. And her life was turned around by her faith. But she said there's so many other young women who are just captive, and they walk around in fear that they can't deviate from what the trafficker says. So, Obed, you wanted to speak on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Smith. Addressing issues of harmful beliefs is not something easy. It's something I've walked a journey of 12 years and I've studied for some long time. The reason as to why even some politicians or leaders or government officials in police or even some judges in courts shy away from helping to reverse this is because some of them subscribe to the same practice. That's number one. Number two, in all our communities we have faith leaders, which is just like a hanging fruit. These are agents of change. Most times if they understand the message, they can actually reverse those harmful practices because the rest of the key people in our communities fear to confront. So there's a lot of fear. But when faith leaders as agents of change embrace a certain issue, they will always crack through the lines and they will always speak against it. Why? Most people in our countries, they subscribe to a certain faith group, either Christian or Islamic. And there is a coexistence. You find people who go to the shrines are the same people who go to a church or a mosque. So when the faith leaders speak boldly about an issue, most times the public will pick it up, and before you know it, there is a chain of collective efforts to address it. So I think we need to integrate that as part of our prevention, to work with faith congregation across board, because people in our communities believe in witch doctors the same way they believe in faith leaders. So at that level, where we have things that people fear to talk about, including politicians or government officials who subscribe to those harmful practices, working with faith leader is kind of a very perfect approach, which can help us penetrate through the lines. Thank you.
Just ask you in terms of how many witch doctors are there? Is there any, of course, it'd be very hard to even do a guesstimate on that, but is there any sense as to how many? And was 20,000 victims or more than, is that an accurate estimate per year of this crime? And let me just ask you as well, does the African Union, based out of Addis Ababa, do anything on this?
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Currently, the AU has actually not also embraced efforts to address ritualistic murders and child sacrifices. So this would be a good opportunity to also, so that we extend accountability measures to the AU, because I talked about more than 30 countries now hit by this practice, and children continue to die. However, like I said, when something comes from the approach of bottom to up, top bottom works better for African countries. Like my colleague was saying, if things like sanctions start to come out, again, it's kind of a wake-up call to the agenda of some of the regional coalitions and the AU in particular. They will wake up and start to pursue this as something of interest. But like Chairman Smith, like I said, if you look at even the categories of the way we look at trafficking, human sacrifice and ritualistic murders are not yet categorized under there. So if we come out boldly to highlight this as an issue, so it will be a wake-up call as well to so many actors, including the leadership of different state heads in Africa.
Just how do the witch doctors go into that practice? Is it something that a witch doctor passes on to a son or a friend? How does that happen, Ms. Fuller?
Witchcraft is an influence. Sometimes it's passed from parents to children or through community members. Like I said, an example is the case that happened 2 months ago of a father who approached a witch doctor, and the witch doctor told him that you have 7 children, kill one, and you will be rich. And the father went ahead, he killed his son. Now as I talk, the family has been totally broken down. So they are not related, but some of these harmful practices are passed on because there are some members of our communities who look at it as an exploitative avenue. To the politicians who want to win elections, they have been deceived and they believe it. To the police or the judicial system, the judges or the officers in those high-ranking offices in government, they are paid bribes and they will never judge a case because someone is benefiting from it. All in all, it's an organized crime, which very sophisticated. So we need, our response should be high level so that we are able to counteract all the barriers that are involved in addressing this issue.
In terms of investigations, are there investigative journalists that have, taken the time and the effort to uncover these atrocities? I mean, as a result of this hearing, we will be putting out all kinds of press to the Africa Press Corps, and whether or not any of them pick up on it will remain to be seen. But are they lax? Are they believers in the occult?
Chairman Smith, thank you very much. Even for the first time for me to get to know about this issue, it was reported in the media. That is in 2009. I can't tell you when it started happening, but the media is another avenue. The same way we talked about faith leaders or the religious leaders. The media has helped so much to report some of the cases where bodies have been cut, and sometimes the media has also promoted such practices. So it's both. In African countries, the media has promoted the work of witch doctors. We have a number of adverts which are run by the media houses that advertise the work of witch doctors. But we know that it's an avenue where we can work with the media team globally, not only in our countries, so that we start to create awareness, to bring it to the agenda of every leader. But we need to use the media, because the witch doctors are occupying this space and they're advertising and fueling. And we also need to come so that we work with the media houses to make sure that we use this platform to create awareness.
Thank you. Any further?
One last thing. A couple of you have mentioned